presence is an honor.
I have been most eager to see the progress you have made, Doctor.
No other introductions needed for the episode 3 review. You know, whenever the Emperor himself makes an appearance, that shit is about to go down. And before I even get into the episode itself and the breakdown and the recap of it, can we just appreciate Ian McDiarmid and how good he is at playing this character? It's crazy to me that even in an animated show probably directed towards children or directed towards sort of hardcore Star Wars fans that isn't, top of the line CGI. It's crazy how even in an episode like that, when looking at the clip that started this video off, how menacing the Emperor can be. And I give a lot of that credit to Ian McDiarmid's performance. He was great in season 2 of The Bad Batch in the limited sort of role he played as the Emperor Palpatine in that. He comes back and delivers another great performance, even when the Emperor really isn't doing anything in this episode, just reviewing sort of the progress of Project Necromancer. He's still great job by the animation team, great job by Ian McDiarmid. The music, again, I think the score for this show has been tremendous since the start. So I thought it'd be remiss not to open the video to appreciate really the great performance that we're getting from Ian McDiarmid, even in an animated show where he could sort of lay out and give a poor performance. You could still hear the menace in the Emperor's voice. And I think really any Star Wars fan, if you're a true fan of the lore, of the product, I think it's hard for you not to appreciate the Emperor when you see him on screen and not take account for, the menacing nature and the credibility that he provides any project that he's in. So the episode begins a lot as it did in episode 1, with Omega being summoned by Dr. Amari to perform her regular duties. Now, what you could already tell, and what this episode does a great job of foreshadowing, is that not everything is the same as we saw in episode 1. There's an unusual buzz around Mount Tantis, there's troopers everywhere, obviously Omega notices, and we hear that there's a special guest coming, who we know, of course, is the aforementioned Emperor Palpatine. Now, the episode picks up when, this time around, Dr. Amari is given the ability, because of the Emperor's presence, and here's how the Emperor's presence really sort of moves the action forward in the story. Dr. Nala Se, as you know, had been previously disregarding Omega's blood samples to prevent her from being tested. As we learned from the end of the episode, the reason for that, of course, is that she could have a successful M transfer and is essentially the key to Project Necromancer, which, if anyone remembers from The Rise of Skywalker, is basically the Emperor's sort of project to try and create a Force-sensitive clone of himself, which had previously sort of not been done before. So Nala Se is called with Dr. Hemlock to meet the Emperor, which allows Dr. Amari to provide the testing. It's at this point that Nala Se advises Omega that now is the time to escape the facility, and we literally get the visual of sort of the blood sample clock as it rotates, getting closer and closer to Omega's sample. That's the time she has to escape before the Empire realizes, just how special of a clone she is, and her time to escape vanishes. So it's essentially a race against the clock episode, and I think it works really well, in the sense of a prison break, to have not only sort of the prison break itself, but also that ticking time element to it. Of course, as we know, it's not like Omega's going to leave without her favorite brother, Crosshair. And I got to say, this was something that really, throughout the show, has been great. I think this was the first time, at least one video indicated that this was really the first time that people thought Omega did have Force sensitivity, when she sort of recognized what the situation was with Crosshair before even the other clones in the Bad Batch could realize sort of what Crosshair was, following the Empire's orders, and why he was so gung-ho on eliminating, Caleb Doom, or Kanan Jarrus, as we know him from Star Wars Rebels. She was really the first one to recognize it. If you remember, at the end of Season 1, Crosshair saved her and AZ when they were drowning in Camino. They've always sort of had this special relationship. It was obviously alluded to in episode 1. And I got to say, it really was cool to see them work together in a prison break. They seem to have good banter together. Crosshair, sort of the grumpy big brother with his, peppy sister. So that was a fun little aside, fun little break. Obviously, we talked about it during the course of the prison break. We're also getting the Emperor as he's reviewing Project Necromancer, and it just made a good sort of split screen to sort of know what the stakes are of the escape as it's taking place. Because it's not just a simple situation of, Omega's freedom going to the Bad Batch. It's literally a life or death scenario now that her blood is going to be tested, and that we know that essentially she is the key to the Empire's project, and we know that that does not bode well for Omega. Obviously, as the situation continues and as the Emperor leaves the premises, it is finally discovered that Omega and Crosshair have escaped the facility and the lockdown begins. And honestly, I really enjoyed this episode. I'm not going to make, two qualms about it. But the one downside that I didn't like in this episode was the ease of the escape. What I mean by that is in episode 1, you got the sense that Mount Tantis was this impenetrable fortress surrounded by vicious man-eating creatures. And I really thought that it was going to be potentially a half a season endeavor to escape the facility. It was built up as this highly secure facility, vicious animals, and meanwhile, Crosshair and Omega were essentially able to escape the facility in, the time it took for all the blood samples to be tested, really essentially the same night that the Emperor came. Of course, after they escape the ray shields, the Empire sends its stormtroopers, and this is another problem that is, Star Wars fans have always talked about it, how incompetent the stormtroopers are. But I guess that was, again, the big problem I had with this episode, that, you have a battalion of stormtroopers that are sent to take out Omega and Crosshair, and, they miss point-blank shots. They can't stun them. They can't damage them. They can't injure them. Basically, Omega and Crosshair are literally able to steal the shuttle that is sent after them to be able to fly off planet. There's no barricades. There's no significant sort of fighter presence other than sort of a few fighters that go to chase them down. Really is sort of a disappointment. That's the one big disappointment I had with the episode, was the escape sequence. Now, don't get me wrong. The escape sequence is fun. Plan 72, a nice little callback to, Tech teaching Omega all of the different clone plans. So I don't want to bash it too hard or grade it too harshly. Although I did feel that the escape was a little too easily. But then at the same time, I think there's a good plot reason to do that, to avoid sort of having the entire last season bogged down at the Mount Tantis facility. And I definitely think that they will be back to rescue the rest of their brothers at this facility. So I don't think this is the last we've seen of Mount Tantis by any means. But at the same time, I thought the escape was pretty easy. And of course, sort of how the episode ends is that as the fighters are pursuing, Dr. Hemlock calls off the attack. Originally, the idea was, shoot to kill and they're escape prisoners and, take them down. But of course, things change when it's discovered that Omega is really the secret to Project Necromancer. Dr. Hemlock needs her blood, not only to sort of advance his project, but also because I believe he wants to be the science minister of the Empire. So that's sort of his rationale for why he's doing what he's doing. So that's sort of how the episode ends. But like I said, all in all, in terms of a recap of, the episode itself and what my thoughts on it were, I really like the parts with the Emperor. I really think it's crazy how even in an animated show like this, that you get the music and the performances to make the Emperor menacing. He still captures the attention even when he's on screen in an animated TV show. I get why the escape needed to happen in this way. I thought all in all the episode was fun. I thought it was a nice touch that, Omega's decision to sort of assist Badger came back in the future, came back to help in the future. Maybe Badger is going to be something of the Bad Batch's, pet mascot moving forward. So that was a nice little touch. But, that sort of follows with the recurring Star Wars theme of, the nature against the technology of the Empire. So I didn't mind that. That follows from what George Lucas has put in. Nothing wrong with that. I thought the escape sequence was interesting. I thought it was fun. You always love, at least in this show, I like the interactions between Omega and Crosshair. I think they really have great chemistry together, and some of the best episodes have been the ones where Crosshair has featured heavily. Curious to see what the issue is with his hand. That's another sort of developing subplot that was found in the episode. That Crosshair is having an issue with his hand, a tremor in his hand. It could be something with the clone DNA breaking down. It could be a side effect of the experiments that might have been run in Mount Tantis, so that'll remain to be seen. If there's one downside to the episode, it was just the escape sequence's ease of escape. Mount Tantis was built as this remote facility that would be impossible to escape, the unbreakable prison, so to speak. And yes, of course, Nala Se's datapad helped, but really for the most part, Omega and Crosshair were really able to get out within sort of half an episode. So that was really my only disappointment. But all in all, I think it was a necessary episode. I really like it as a good tie-in to, or a real, to put a bow on the first 3 episodes of the show. So I like what they did with the premiere. I like that they are gone from Mount Tantis, and now we could really get into maybe sort of, I'm hoping that they reunite with the Bad Batch relatively quickly, so we could sort of get into what I think it's going for. I think we're headed for the Clone Rebellion or some serious action against Mount Tantis. I think there are more surprises to come. So all in all, I'm happy with how the episode ended. I thought it was a good episode. I am going to give it an A-. I think A+ for the stuff having to do with the Emperor. I think he always grabs attention when he's on screen, but a little bit of a minus for the ease of the escape. So all in all, A-. Great episode. Really like the direction the Bad Batch is heading. I definitely think this was an improvement from episode 2 that was basically the McGovern episode. So very happy with that. Really, really, really looking forward to what the Bad Batch does moving forward. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for reviews coming in the future.